they were so impressed by Buddha that they came to him, became his disciples. One was Hariputra, and the other was the person who would become famous all across Japan, China, Southeast Asia, as the person on whom the Hungry Ghost Festival is based. His name was Modgalyayan. Now, Modgalyayan is a mouthful. It's not very easy to say that, even for Indians. It's a Sanskrit name. So he was turned into Mulian in Chinese. And there is a certain Ulamban Sutra, which is one of the sayings, teachings of Gautam Buddha in Sanskrit. In around the 3rd century, this one was translated into Chinese and Modgalyayan became Mulian.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Walk Indian History Podcast. I'm Utkarsh, coming from Singapore.
Namaskar, a very warm welcome again after a longer gap than I would have liked. But it's wonderful to be with all of you again with a very interesting new topic. Utkarsh, do the honors.
Yeah, I think this topic will really bring to life why we do this. And the story of how this topic came about, I think, has to be talked about because for me, whatever story you're going to tell me, this story itself is quite extraordinary. So the story begins, as some stories do, 20 years ago, when I came to Singapore for the first time.
Okay.
It was around this time of year. I came to Singapore in July of 2004.
So, Utkarsh, you know that there is a very famous film in Hindi called 20 Saal Baad. So you are telling us this story 20 Saal Baad.
Yeah. So then, I think a couple of months later, it was around August or September, I cannot recall. I started noticing something very strange. I started noticing people burning stuff on the streets. They were burning paper, incense sticks. In fact, they used to have little, no, I don't want to say bonfire, but they actually gather a bunch of paper objects, put it inside something and burn it. And some local Chinese friends told me that this month you should not be going out. Okay. I said, why? They said, because it's Hungry Ghost Month. I'm like, what is Hungry Ghost Month? And what's a ghost hungry? What is going on? They said, no, it's a thing. So it turns out in Singapore and in Malaysia, the overseas Chinese, because both of these countries have a big overseas Chinese community. They came from China. The British brought them as workers, whatever, 100, 150 years ago. They celebrate this thing called Hungry Ghost Month. They're supposed to, my understanding of it, what they've told me is they're supposed to give offerings to their ancestors. So people burn all sorts of stuff. They burn Louis Vuitton bags. They make paper versions of everything. Louis Vuitton bags.
Do Ferraris. They actually burn those bags, the real ones?
No. They make a paper version. So you can go to a shop and you can buy a paper version of a Louis Vuitton bag, paper version of Ferrari, whatever it is your ancestor wants.
Utkarsh, do the really, really rich guys burn the real Louis Vuitton bags?
No. It's only the paper. They're very clear about it. It's only the paper. But it's quite a sight because Singapore is the first world country. It's quite a sight to see not even in certain places you're seeing people burning stuff on the road like that. And also they also do this sort of thing, forgetting what the word is, where they create really loud noise, a ruckus. It's a certain kind of play or a kind of art form.
Getai.
And the intention, Getai, yes. Yeah. And that's funny that you know it, which will get us to this episode.
Yes.
And that's supposed to apparently so that the ancestors can hear it. So it's quite a big thing. It's been happening for years. So
and I took last month you sent me some pictures when the actual celebrations were happening. You sent me these pictures.
Yeah, because it was happening right outside my house. I was walking my dogs, so I thought I'll just send it to you.
Yeah, maybe we can put those pictures in this podcast.
I will do that.
Yeah.
And the reason I sent it to you is because I remembered that a few months ago, out of the blue, you asked me, have you heard of something called Hungry Ghost? And I was quite surprised that you would ask me that because Hungry Ghost is something associated with Chinese culture in Malaysia and Singapore. I think you went to Malaysia and Singapore for all of 1 day or 2 days many years ago. Yes. I don't think you encountered Hungry Ghost.
No, not at all.
So I was like, why are you asking me about such a specific Singapore, Malaysia, Chinese thing? That was a real shock to me. Like, why are you asking? Firstly, why do you know about this? Why are you asking me about it? It's such a random thing to ask about. And that's when you told me that this whole thing had an Indian origin. And that was like, for me, really? Because for me, much like we had the conversation on martial arts, where we
Yeah.
talked about Bodhidharma, for me, this whole hungry ghost thing, I've been seeing it for 20 years. Right? It is so much a part of what the Singapore and the Malaysian Chinese community do
Yeah.
that it was just, the very fact that you were aware of it, because it's a very local cultural thing. It's not something spread all over the world. It's not that big in mainland China like it's here. I believe it's a little bit bigger here. So it's not like Christmas, like everyone in the world has heard of Christmas, right? It's a very specific local community, local Chinese community thing. So it was really shocking that you heard it. And I guess that's why we had to do this podcast, because
Yes.
it's just
So
so
people,
fascinating.
we do fulfill our promises. Remember, we told you in that episode when we were doing Bodhidharma that we would follow up on all these India, Southeast Asia, Japan, Korea connections. So this
Hmm.
is one of the episodes in this series. And honestly, Utkarsh, although I like doing all the episodes, the ones which I do on India's connections with Southeast Asia, Japan, Korea, and China are really special because
Yeah.
there's this amazing shock of recognition. See, like you said very correctly, I have never been to these countries of the world. Never been to China, or maybe just once to Japan, and for 2 days to Malaysia and Singapore. That's it. But there's this strong sense of recognition that I know this. I know where this comes from. So, which is why,
Hmm.
whatever this concept of Kitai is very familiar. And of course, Hungry Ghost. So, shall I tell you how
Yes.
it has its origins in India and what are the philosophical and
Hmm.
metaphysical ideas
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
originated from the Indian
Correct.
subcontinent.
Yeah,
That's
because
the interesting part.
because there are some very, very particular practices, the burning of things, right? And it's called hungry ghost. And somebody was telling me we burn stuff because that's the only way the ghost can consume it, or something like that. I was telling me. So I would love to know,
Yeah.
because we've talked a lot about how apparent superstition isn't entirely superstition. Think of what we talked about in Jyotish in the past, where you may think of the
Mm.
casual Western observer think of it as pseudoscience like seances and mediums and astrology, but
Mm.
it's really not. So I'm very
Mm.
curious about the basis of this. What is
Yes.
the reason for doing this beyond the story?
Yes. Mm. Beyond the story, although I mean, I may not be able to give you an explanation like the one which is there for Jyotish, because
Hmm.
things are different. And there's something which you said, which is very significant here. You said it's a very local community affair.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
the Hungry Ghost Festival has become, in fact, it's called Yulan Pen or Ulamban in Chinese, and it has many other different names in many other different
Hmm.
countries. But
Hmm. Hmm.
Yulan Pen is the Chinese name, and I'll tell you where that originates also. But
Okay.
let's
Sure.
go back to
Yeah.
the Vedic ideas, which
Okay.
are at the base of this entire festival. And we'll see how they changed form slowly to reach where they are today.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
what is the basis of Vedic life? The basis of Vedic life, it's fire, it's sacrifice, and society is organized along Varn and Ashram. Varn,
Hmm.
as we know, is what we call today the caste
Yeah.
system, mistakenly, and
I think
Ashram.
sorry to interrupt you there. I just realized an important preface for this. So, one of the things I'm keen to do with this episode is that I have a number of Singaporean, Malaysian, Chinese friends. Typically, I do not, I think Wak Indian history is very much for the Indian ears, of course, if the concepts apply beyond. But this particular episode, given it strikes so close to home, I will be sharing it actively to them as well. So I
Yeah,
think it's wonderful you're already doing that, but I think every concept we may need to just explain a little bit
yeah, yeah,
just to help them come along.
yes. So, why I'm starting here is because this is the very basis of Vedic
Hmm.
society. Varn,
Yeah,
Ashram, Dharma. Varn roughly is occupations, and
correct.
Ashram is your stage of life. Are you a student? Are you a married person? Are you somebody old and aged and on the verge of leaving this life? What are you? So there are four ashrams. I'll not go into all of it. It may be too
Hmm.
complicated, but I'll go into the second one, which is called Grihast Ashram. Just remember
Okay.
this Grihast Ashram, which is the second one. This is basically the life of a householder, married, with an occupation, who is creating some surplus in society of different kinds. And we'll go into what those are and why they are
Hmm.
important for Hungry Ghost. So this
Okay.
is the grihast. This is the
Okay.
householder. Now, why do you need to become a householder? Do you need to become one? Yes. The Shastras are very emphatic that this is the most important ashram, and each individual who is born must become a householder. Why? Because again, in Vedic thought, there is the concept that every living being owes three debts. These are called the Rin Trai, the three debts. What are they? One is Dev Rin, that is to the gods, for being born, for the sustenance of this life, etc. The
Hmm.
second is Pitri Rin, and the third is for your Guru. That is uh, today, what is important is Pitri Rin. So
Hmm.
Pitri Rin is the debt you owe to your ancestors. Now you see
Okay.
where it's kind of coming
Hmm.
together.
Yeah.
Pitri Rin is what you owe to your ancestors because
Hmm.
they are the ones, who created the society, who created you, who brought you into this
Yep.
world. And after some time, each person themselves in their turn becomes an ancestor.
Hmm.
So this cycle goes on. How does an individual pay the Pitririn or the debt to the ancestors? There are many ways of doing it, and you can see from the Hungry Ghost Festival that there are many, what can I say, ideas about rituals about how this
Hmm.
can be done. But one of the most important things is children. So having children discharges the Pitririn because each child, through the life of that child, remembers their ancestors, honors their ancestors, and gives filial piety and gives a kind of love, affection even to deceased ancestors. Love and
Hmm.
affection to parents is very normal, but love, affection, and respect to those who are deceased. And
Hmm.
in the Indian thinking, seven generations is very important. And so it is actually even in the Chinese, Buddhist, and Taoist thinking. It's seven
Hmm.
generations, which is important, seven generations of ancestors. So
Hmm.
now you've got this thing in your mind, this
Yep.
Pitririn. It's one of the most important things that every Sanatani Hindu individual, Vedic individual had to
Hmm.
do.
Hmm.
Now let's go back to that perpetual storehouse, fountainhead of everything we talk about. It's either the Ramayana or the Mahabharata. So we'll go back
Hmm.
to the Mahabharata. We'll go back to the beginning of the Mahabharata, which is the Adi Parv. That is the first one. In this Adi Parv, there is something called the Astik Parv. Now, why am I talking about Astik? Because Astik is the son of an ascetic person called Jaratkaru. And who is Jaratkaru? Jaratkaru is the person because of whom the Hungry Ghost Festival started.
Okay.
So, in terms of the Mahabharata, this is the foundational story of the Mahabharata because
Wow.
the son of Abhimanyu, who was Parikshit,
Hmm.
he had disrespected someone with a dead snake. So finally, he died through a snake bite. So
Okay.
his son, Janmejay, decided that he would exterminate all the snakes in the world.
Okay.
For that, he started a yajna in Naimisharanya. And it was during that yajna that the story of the Mahabharata is being told to everyone by Lomharshan. Lomharshan is a disciple of Krishna Dvaipayan or Vedvyas who wrote the Mahabharata. So you see, it is during this that the
Oh
whole
wow.
story of the Mahabharata is coming out. And once this sacrifice is
Also, where
finished,
the Bhagavad Gita is coming out, since it's part of the
yes, the
Mahabharata.
Bhagavad Gita, yes, indeed. So
Wow.
once
Yeah.
this sacrifice is finished, all the snakes in the world are going to die. So why are they going to die? There's an interesting story about that because Indian stories, Utkarsh stories within stories, reasons and reasons which
Yeah.
go much beyond 7, 8 generations, much beyond many generations. So in short, the story is that the mother of all the snakes, her name is Kadru. She is the wife of Kashyap. Remember the name Kashyap because it will come up again in the Buddhist story.
Mm-hmm.
So Kadru was very angry with her sons, all the snakes, because she asked them to do something to win a bet against her sister, also a co-wife, and they didn't do it. So she was very angry and she said, "All of you are going to die." Now they don't want to die. So they are trying to look for ways in which to not die. So
Hmm.
the thing is that Jaratkaru's son is
Hmm.
going to save them. But
Hmm.
Jaratkaru is a very, very ascetic individual. He has no interest in anything worldly.
Hmm.
So he is deep into meditation and sannyas and spiritual self-realization, and he doesn't care about anything else. So he
Hmm.
is wandering around, and then he sees that he comes to a place and he sees that all his ancestors are hanging upside down, tied by a rope along their feet and over a horrible black gaping pit. And that
Okay.
rope is being bitten slowly by rats. So
Okay.
anytime can be cut through
Yeah.
and they will
Yeah.
fall into that pit. So Jaratkaru is very sad and intrigued, and he asks them, why is this so? Why are you hanging like this in the pit of hell?
Yeah.
They say it's because of you. You are not getting married. You don't have any children. There is nobody to do tarpan for us. So we are going to descend into hell any minute. If you don't get married and if you don't have a child, then we are condemned. So Jaratkaru is not very interested in getting married, but he is moved by their plight and he feels some responsibility. So he says, okay, I'll get married, but I'm a very poor man. So somebody will have to give me their daughter without asking me to maintain her because I don't have any money. Then strangely enough, he says, I will marry someone who has the same name as me. So I will marry
Okay.
a woman called Jaratkaru, and she has to be offered freely to me by her father or brother or whoever it is. So, well, let me look for someone. Now, he was not really a very good marriage prospect, you know. People were not lining up to give him their daughters or sisters. So anyway, he wanders around a lot, and then finally, who comes up but Vasuki? Who is Vasuki? He is the king of the snakes. And Vasuki's sister is called Jaratkaru, and he is willing to give her in marriage to our Jaratkaru, the ascetic. And so the two of them get married, and then Astik is born. And then there is another story about how Astik also grows up as a great spiritual, religious, and self realized man. And he finally goes to that yajna of Janmejay and he manages to save the snakes. So you see, this story is the foundational story of the Mahabharata. Now, from here, during the time that Gautam Buddha was preaching his own ideas of salvation and life and ideas and rituals. So he used to, of course, you know, he was a man who was fully learned in all in the Ved, Puran, Itihas, corpus. He was fully learned in that. So he used to take up stories from there and then tell them to people in the context of Buddhism. So this is how he picked up this story of Jaratkaru. And this was transferred to whom? This was transferred to his favorite disciple. He had two main favorite first initial disciples. You know, the first people who came with 250 followers, they were the disciples of another great teacher of that time, but they were so impressed by Buddha that they came to him, became his disciples. One was Sariputra, and the other was the person who would become famous all across Japan, China, Southeast Asia, as the person on whom the Hungry Ghost Festival is based. His name was Modgalyayan. Now, Modgalyayan is a mouthful. It's not very easy to say that, even for Indians. It's a Sanskrit name. So he was turned into Mulian in Chinese. And there is a certain Ulamban Sutra, which is one of the sayings, teachings of Gautam Buddha in Sanskrit. In around the 3rd century, this one was translated into Chinese and Modgalyayan became Mulian. And over here, the story goes according to what Buddha says. So everyone asks him, why is Modgalyayan such a favorite of yours? Why is he seen as the ideal of the Buddhist disciples? He said he is a very realized soul and he was one of the bodhisattvas. And his story is again the same story as Jaratkaru, that he is wandering around. He sees his mother, here it is specifically his mother, in hell. She is very hungry, she is unable to eat, and she is also, remember, hanging upside down. This hanging upside down has a special significance and resonance because it makes everything so much worse and so much more precarious. She's also hanging upside down by a rope. Now, in Sanskrit, there is a word called avalamban, which actually means hanging on something. So this Ulamban Sutra is the Sanskrit word or Sanskrit changed word. Avalamban becomes Ulamban. So Maud Galyayan or Mulian, he looks at his mother, then he feels very sad, and he's a very realized soul. So he does a lot of things. He goes to his ancestral temple and he tries to give food to his mother. Then nothing happens. His mother is suffering and he doesn't want her to suffer. So he asks the Buddha what to do. The Buddha says that you have to gain merit by working with the Sangha, the Buddhist Sangha. And when you gain merit, and the Sangha is you either do some work for it or do charity or whatever, this merit, the Sangha will transfer to your mother. And then she will be able to be reborn in heaven. So see, here it is again also the Indian story of karma, rebirth, and of children contributing to the pap and punya and whatever happens to the parents after death. These same things are repeated. In fact, Maud Galyayan is part of the illustrations of the Buddhist wheel of life in many of the stupas and illustrations that you find. So anyway, the Buddha gives him this advice, and Maud Galyayan does this. And this one is the basis of the hungry ghost story. Because what happens is that a day is fixed for this. What day is fixed for this? It is called the Pravaran Divas. There was a Pravaran Divas of the Buddhists during the time of the Buddha and even later, when the Sangha, the Sangha was all the collection of monks who used to live together. So in the monsoon period, they used to stay in one place, which was called a vas, and they would not move around because it was too difficult. Then this day would end. When this whole period ended, this was called the Pravaran Divas, and it was on this day that the Hungry Ghost Festival was fixed. This is the day that Gautam Buddha fixed it. He fixed it on the 15th day of the 7th month. However, Utkarsh, I have a little bit of a doubt here. It's not in July, is it, in Singapore?
Well,
It's
this
in
month
August.
it was in August. It was like August 12th to 30th or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, so probably it is again, because different calendars are followed by different countries. Probably that's why the months become because it's very specific everywhere. It is the 15th day of the 7th month. And the 7th month is called the Hungry Ghost month. And that 15th day is the Hungry Ghost festival. Now, let's see how have things changed and how have they remained the same. The basic idea of Pitri Rin remains the same. Filial piety is added as part of the Confucian setup. So in China, you had the teachings of Confucius, which were very important, and I'm sure you would be a little more familiar than me with them, perhaps. That filial piety is very much emphasized by Confucius, and it is one of the central things in the Chinese way of life. So here in this story, both these things come together. Pitri Rin as well as filial piety, both these things come together. And so I think this festival really caught on. How it happens in India is a little bit different. You know, Utkarsh, that right now we are in the 3rd day of the Pitri Paksh. So the Pitri Paksh is the time for Hindus when ancestors come down. And Pitri Paksh, a lot of prayer, ritual, food items, etc. are offered to our ancestors. Does that sound familiar? Of course it does, because it's the same principle. It's only that the Buddha gave a specific time for it. He fixed it according to the social and ritual calendar of the Buddhists, because that he wanted everyone to get together and do this. And the time when all the monks used to get together was this Pravaran Divas. So this was the time when he fixed it. Now, unless you have a question, I want to go on a little bit to the Taoists, because that was also a very important thing in China. And how did the Taoists
I,
see
I
it?
I want you to complete the theological part of this. Then I have a bunch of questions, and then we can get into the historical part.
Okay.
Maybe you can finish the theological part of it.
Okay, so I'll just, kind of go on and tell you a little bit about Taoism also. That is also one of the religions followed in China. Now, over there, I mean, for the Taoists, it's called, it is the Zhongyuan Ji. That is the name of this festival, Zhongyuan Ji. And here is a little different. There are three lords of the realm who control everything in Taoist thinking. And one of them, the middle lord, his name is Di Guan Da Di. He comes down on this day. On this day of the hungry ghost, he comes down. Now, what does he do when he comes down? He actually comes and checks who has done what is good, what is bad. So it is kind of weighing your sins and your good deeds, which is done by one of the lords of the three realms. This is also on the 15th day of the 7th month. Now, the spirits of the underworld come down with him. So, to pacify them, to make them happy, many rites and rituals are done. People pray in temples, and forgiveness is also asked of the ancestors. So, can you see again a little bit of a tweak, Utkarsh? The idea of weighing your sins and good deeds in the balance comes in. And does this remind you of yet another Vedic deity and yet another Vedic concept is Chitragupt, who is the accountant of heaven, who is
And our
always,
illustrious ancestor, right?
yes, yours and mine, our illustrious ancestor. So, in a way, the Guan Dadi is Chitragupt of the Taoists. So, maybe we can adopt him too as our
For
ancestor.
for non-Indians, we are from a community called Kayas who attribute their ancestry to Chitragupt. That's why.
Yes.
I mean,
So,
us particularly.
Chitragupt had
Yeah.
13 sons, and those are the 13 subcastes. So, Utkarsh is from a different subcaste. Mine is Srivastav, and his is Embushed. So,
Is
though
it
are
okay?
they,
I did not
yeah.
know, but I thanks. Now I do.
And
Yes.
these, so they were brothers. And they
Okay.
were actual brothers, and there are 12 of them. And one was a step brother. He was called Karna. So those are Karnakayas. But anyway, that's fascinating in its own way, but not for the moment. But we can call the Guandadi as our ancestor if we like. So you see, for the Taoists and for the Buddhists, there's a little bit of a difference. The Taoists are appeasing wandering souls, and all the mortals on earth are also getting judged. What did you do well? What did you do badly? Etc. Whereas for Buddhists, and especially Chinese Buddhists, it is filial piety. It is all about honoring your ancestors. And the reason why I'm not saying why is because you already said it. You gave an example of the way in which they are honoring their ancestors. Although there's one thing which you had sent me a picture of, but you have not mentioned, and I want to mention it. That was the lighting of the lamps. You sent me a picture of some lighted lamps. So when do we light lamps? We light lamps on Diwali, but we know that Diwali is connected with Sri Ram, and we know that Diwali is also connected with Devi Puja. But Diwali is also connected to the going back of all our ancestors who came down during Pitri Paksh. So on that day, during that time, they're going back to heaven. So what do? We light lamps to show them the way. We burst crackers in the air to show them the way upwards. So see the connection between what is done on Hungry Ghost Day and Diwali. So you see that the same ideas are kind of changed according to the society where they go, the place where they are, the region where they are, and the people who are actually doing these rites, rituals, and festivals. But the ideas, the roots, I hope I've been able to explain the Vedic roots of this.
Yes. Though there are so many questions, and I want to get into them while I don't want to distract from the history of it. So the first thing is, like stone. Okay. according to Vedic thought, Indian thought, you have rebirth. So my question to you is, if people are reborn, if your ancestors are reborn, why are they still existing as hungry ghosts? Or
No,
why are they, or let me put it another way, why is there a heaven and a hell? Which to me seems like a very Christian concept. Also, just going on that, I mean, I'll give you all my questions together because possibly they'll have similar answers. I remember that in the Middle Ages, there was this entire scandal that Catholic priests used to take money from people to help rescue their ancestors from purgatory or something, right? They used to keep taking money. I'm forgetting there's a specific term for that practice, right? But they didn't do anything with it. But people got the impression that that money would be going towards helping their ancestors. I found something very interesting connected here. But yeah, my fundamental question is, I thought the Hindu concept is rebirth. So why do you have folks in these heaven and hell-like states?
No, because Utkarsh, one, of course, it's not the kind of heaven and hell, the Christian heaven and hell is not there. But the concept of rebirth, it's not immediate. There are phases through which the soul passes. Now, some soul may attain nirvana, in which case there is no rebirth, in which case the ancestors need not worry. The descendants need not worry because the ancestor has attained nirvana. However, if you, for example, if you really want details of this,
so I'll give you something, and when you're in Singapore, maybe you should come and take a look at it. So not very far from where we stay, there's a place in Singapore. The name is not important, but I'm telling you the concept. It's an old, not amusement park, but it's an old attraction. It's called Hapa Villa. And it shows the 10 stages of hell, 10 courts of hell. According to, I don't know whether it's Chinese thought or Buddhist thought. Does this have any connection to what you're talking about?
Yes. And let me first tell you the connection to the hungry ghost also.
Yeah. Okay.
Because this one, the one where Mulian or Maud Galyayan finds his mother hanging, hungry, not able to eat, that is a particular stage of hell. So Utkarsh, next time you go there, look at are there illustrations?
I think, yes, it's very graphic.
Okay.
Actually, I really think
next time you go and look for the hungry ghost illustration.
I suggest,
the one where she's hanging.
I think you have another reason to come and visit Singapore, apart from everything that's there.
Because
when you close down, things in Singapore often close down for redevelopment. This has been around for 50 years. It's one of the oldest
Utkarsh, take a picture. And we'll put it on this podcast.
I'll send, of course, and I'll send it to you as well after this.
Yes. Okay. And as to your original question of the time element, the thing is that all these, the time involved in this, we cannot understand according to the time on Earth. How much time are they in which stage? At what stage of time are they going to be reborn? See, once they are reborn, then they are not your ancestors who are in the netherworld. So this is for the time when they are in the netherworld. If they have attained nirvana, no problem. If they have had rebirth, then they are on earth and they are living out the fruits of their karma. It is when they are in limbo, when they are in the netherworld. And to understand this netherworld, there is a special Puran called the Garud Puran, which tells you in exact detail what happens exactly after death. How the soul, the Atma, not the soul, goes through stages, how and when it is reborn, not reborn, where it goes. All this is explained in great detail in the Garud Puran. So these are the spirits which are in the netherworld. Again, remember, it is for 7 generations that we do this. And Utkarsh, there is one little transverse or idea to this, which is a modern science one about the impact of genetics for 7 generations. Flag this, and one day we will do this also. We'll pick up the idea of Gotra, we'll pick up the idea of 7 generations, and we'll see how it links up to modern genetics.
Yeah, I remember seeing conversations on this. This has been linked to something else about how certain kind of trauma can be You can
Transmitted.
still transmit it across generations.
Yes, yes. When we do our much awaited episode on consciousness, maybe, we'll be
It
able
is so
to
much
look
awaited
into
that
all this.
even we are awaiting it. We're waiting to do it. We've been talking about it forever.
Yeah, yeah. But I must, it's been me who's been kind of not agreeing as yet, because, I feel I have a little bit of thinking and
And
reading
now
to
I'm
do.
looking at a picture from Hoppa Villa of a person hanging upside down.
There you go. Can you share it?
I'll share it with
It would
you.
be fun. Yeah, it would be fun. Yeah. So, any other question? Next question.
No, so that was it. So I was trying to understand. I think you clarified, right? The children part of it. Let me understand that. So what you're saying is the belief is saying that unless you have children, you're going to be hanging around in metaverse. Is
Yeah.
that
So
what the
that is the
implication
belief.
is?
Yes, that is the implication. But for those who don't have children, there are deeming provisions.
Okay.
Yeah. So so and so can be deemed to be the child. Therefore, you see, there are other people in the family who take the place of the children. And
Okay.
also, after every yagya, so the
Hmm.
the yajman, that is the man and his wife, they perform any sacrifice. Then there is a
Hmm.
rebirth. So that rebirth can also be, it's a kind of metaphysical rebirth, not a real one, once you do that
Hmm.
sacrifice. And that rebirth is also can be deemed to be the child. So there are deeming provisions.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. That was it.
Okay. So China, of course, was one of the main places where this caught on very strongly. But
Hmm.
it was not just China where it caught on. There were many other places also, and all these places are the places of influence of Indian ideas till at least I would say the 11th, 12th century. After that, perhaps Islam took over as one of the main motivational forces in that area. But till the 11th,
Hmm.
12th century, I would say these ideas, it started very early. It started
Hmm. Hmm.
one day again. We will do a special episode on the links between India and China and when and where they started. So this was 300, 400, 500 years before the Common Era that we know
Hmm.
we have certain Chinese records
Hmm.
of links between India and China. However, when you go to actual remains, even during the Neolithic period, there were trade routes and links between India and China. So, it's that old.
Hmm.
But apart from China, in Malaysia, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Thailand, I believe you told me that some of your Taiwanese friends are very great, or I mean enthusiastic about the Hungry Ghost Festival. It's important for them.
I think so. I don't know anyone particularly well, but this is my understanding from someone else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know firsthand.
Okay. So in Thailand, it is called Portor. In
By
Malaysia,
the way,
they
what's it called in India? I'm sorry.
yeah. So
It's
in
not there.
no. So in India, what we do is during Mahalya.
Okay.
Mahalya is the time where Mahalya Amavasya. So
Mm-hmm.
Pitri Paksh ends in Mahalya Amavasya. So during Pitri Paksh, every day we are supposed to do this, Utkarsh. Every day. Give foodstuffs for your ancestors and offer them whatever. But here it is a little more regulated in the sense that no, you don't give models of Ferrari cars, etc. They are more, they are very specific, like you
Mm-hmm.
offer rice, especially
Mm-hmm.
white rice, you will offer cloth, and you will offer these to certain birds and animals, crows, dogs. These are supposed to have the spirits of the ancestors in them.
On
So,
that point, and you were just so during Hungry Ghost Festival, what we are told is don't roam around at night.
yes. Yeah.
That's number one thing. Right? It's you have to be careful. People don't buy new houses. People don't buy new cars during Hungry
Yes.
Ghost month.
Yes. Yes.
Uh,
So,
so
Utkarsh, the same rules for Pitri Paksh.
okay.
Exactly the same rules. And we are now in Pitri Paksh. at the moment. It's going on. So the rules for Hungry Ghost Month, actions for Hungry Ghost Day, they are all followed during Pitri Paksha in India.
Okay.
And there is a combination of actions because, like I told you, Pitri Paksh, and then you'll have Mahalya Amavasya when it ends. Then you will have Navratra, and then you will have Diwali. And on Diwali, we will do all that sending back the ancestors. They'll go back. So we will light the lamps, we will burst the crackers, and we will show the ancestors the way back. So here, for Hungry Ghost Month, you can say Pitru Paksh.
Okay. But I don't think it's commonly celebrated or known.
Utkarsh, it's not really a time for celebration, so to speak.
Maybe celebration is the wrong word, but it's not commonly practiced.
Utkarsh, it is
At least
done
among
by
people I know.
Yeah, but it is done by each and every family,
Really?
including mine.
Okay.
My husband will offer white rice we keep it outside. I mean, as we speak, we also do it here in Geneva.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So maybe
No, I'm just comparing it to something like Diwali, which is not a great comparison because Diwali is the biggest.
No, and Pitru Paksh is more a time to remember, honor, and respect your ancestors. And they are walking around amongst you, so you have to be careful. You have to be a little afraid of them.
Okay.
So I think the same thing is there for the Hungry Ghost Month. You are supposed to be careful, etc., etc. But I think some part of the celebration element has crept in. The celebration that we do during Diwali, I think that celebration happens during Hungry Ghost Month or day. And of course, we were mentioning the Getai. So the Getai, you do everything for your ancestors. So food, drink, Ferrari, Gucci, whatever. And you also entertain them. So the Getai is for entertainment and loud noises so that they can hear and they can be entertained. And of course, as we discussed, the first row is kept empty for your ancestors. You're not supposed to sit there.
That's another thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
The first row is kept empty because all the ancestors are actually sitting there and enjoying the performance, and you are not supposed to go sit there and disturb them. So, Utkarsh, isn't it interesting how the same ideas find fruition and flower in different ways in different countries? You can see the similarities. At the same time, you can see the differences, which is the most interesting, fascinating part. And talking about song and dance in Japan. So in Japan, the Ulamban became the Urabon, which became the Obon. And what happens during this time? The same ideas. The only thing is that
Obon is a big festival.
Yes, and it is the same. Yes,
it's
and there's a lot of singing and dancing.
When I was working on Japan, Obon is a key period.
Well,
I'm surprised to hear you say the word. Again, it's
Here
something from my Japan assignment.
There you go, Utkarsh. And again, it has its roots in the Mahabharata and in the Pitri Rin. So what happens
that needs to be a separate episode.
No. This I'll tell you quickly.
Then we add it here.
Yeah, quickly.
Crazy.
Yeah, because what happened when Maud Galyayan's mother, she was released by the actions of her son from hell. So she started dancing in happiness. So that is why this is called the Song and Dance Festival. There is a special Bon dance. That is the dance of celebration of Mulian's mother. And in Japan, the names have, of course, all of them have become different. That's why it's called Obon, and Mulian is also called Mukuran. The person who has done all this, the person whose mother is released, is Mukaran. And the dance is Bon and the festival is Obon. So you see, Utkarsh, yet another aha moment. Where some festival that turns out to have Indian roots.
Yeah.
The interesting part is
maybe
that
a separate episode is because I think we have to do it. Is the connection between Japan and ancient Japanese culture and ancient India, because there is so much there. based on just the small conversations I've had with you.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a lot there. And Utkarsh, the more I read, the more the things I find out. Because
yeah.
this festival now, you're telling me, I don't know because I'm not so well aware of things, whether it was still celebrated or not. And you're telling me it is.
Yes, it's a big one.
So is it like Diwali when people are buying lots of things?
It is definitely a time period. Now, I don't know the details of how the Japanese spend it. All I know is that they buy more stuff and we make special Obon packs as well
Oh,
as we did. You know, like you have a Diwali pack.
oh, okay.
So we do
Okay,
that.
then. So you see, I mean, I can see the similarities between Diwali and Obon
Yeah,
already.
but I'll have to, because, it's
Yeah, I'll
just,
do some research on this.
yeah, I'll have to do a bit because I don't want to misstate it. See,
Yeah,
from my
yeah.
perspective, as I worked selling razors and all those other things and all the other consumer goods in Japan, we had certain periods that were key consumption periods when people buy more. End of the year, New Year's is a key consumption period because everybody is like December, January. And Obon was also one of them.
See, wonders will never cease.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we talk more and something new comes up which fascinates both you and me. Me, because
Yeah.
I'm certain that there are Indian roots to everything. And
Yeah.
you, because you don't know that there are Indian roots to everything. So I
No,
think
because these are all things I have discovered as a foreigner in Singapore initially, as a foreigner in Malaysia, as a foreigner in Japan, and as a foreigner in Korea. And then, to have it connect back to India in such a tremendous way is it's quite interesting. I think we should have a trip where we can actually go and look at, you should actually see all these things at the root.
yeah,
Right, where they're celebrated.
wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
And Hungry Ghost Festival could be pretty easy. I don't know about Obon since I don't know when it is and all, but Hungry Ghost seems to be a big thing, and it would
Yes.
not be difficult at all to coincide it like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And Utkarsh, maybe another idea is to see how many of these Southeast Asian, Japanese, Korean, Chinese festivals we can connect up to our own Indian festivals.
Yeah, I mean, Southeast Asia is very easy to connect. I mean, basically, Sankranti is basically Holi without the color. We talked about this in our other episode.
Yeah, we had it in the Holi episode.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
True.
there's a lot. There's lot of stuff there.
Yeah. So in Singapore, is it also a holiday?
Songkran?
No. Hungry Ghost.
No.
It's not a holiday.
No.
Okay, because it's a Singaporean Chinese community which celebrates
so Singapore is, what it does is, because Singapore is a very diverse country, though it is 70% Chinese, it has Malay, it has Indian, it has others. So not all festivals of all communities designated a public holiday, because otherwise you'd have too many. So the Chinese get Chinese New Year, the Malays get Hari Raya, which is basically Eid, and the Indians get Diwali.
Utkarsh, can I stop you there? Hari Raya. Who is Hari?
Yes, I know.
Hari is Vishnu.
Yes. That's another thing to explore.
And
yes.
Raya is king. So it's Vishnu
Another
the
thing
king.
to explore. Yes.
Yes. And in this area, there is a version of Islamic version of Ramayana, let me say. It's called the Hikayat Sri Ram. The Hikayat Sri Ram, where everything is the same, only instead of Bhagwan, you have Allah.
Yes.
So, what this illustrates, this is something that I have mentioned over many episodes, that stories which are popular with people, these stories are picked up by all religions or cults or people who want to be popular. And they ride on these stories. They ride on the popularity of these stories. So today, the Ramayana is not at all popular amongst Islamic peoples. But at one point of time...
With an exception, it's very popular in Indonesia, even though it's an Islamic country.
Yeah, but Indonesia, it's popular in the Hindu parts, Utkarsh.
No.
In Bali.
All over the country. Even I mean, you can see this, right? Again, it's a different version. It could be the Islamic version. I don't know which specific version.
No. The story in Indonesia is the same. The Indonesian Ramayana is more or less the same.
So you can see by the name
should we do an episode on the different Southeast Asian Ramayans? It's fascinating.
Sure.
Yeah, let's do an episode on that.
Yeah. No, so
Yeah, and
Indonesia, the
Diwali
national.
is coming up. We should do it for Diwali.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I've
then
always
we'll
wondered
get
why it's
along to consciousness.
yes, because I've always wondered why Diwali is on a different day in North India, South India, and Singapore. Singapore
Yeah.
follows the same day as South India. That's another
Okay.
side topic.
Okay. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should do one on this. But you were saying something about the
So
popularity
Indonesia,
of
I
Ramayana.
mean, Ram is always the king in Indonesia. The national airlines is called Garud.
Yeah. And don't they have some very beautiful sculptures? They have
Oh
very
yeah,
beautiful wooden sculptures of Sita and Ram and so many other
I'm sure they do. I'm
characters
sure they
from
do.
the
Yeah,
Ramayana. Because somebody
yeah.
gifted me a beautiful sculpture of Sita under the Ashok tree.
And even Indonesian the shadow puppets, the stories that they're telling under Ramayana.
Yeah.
So there's so much
That is,
going on.
I think it's called the Vayankulit, if I am not
I
mistaken.
I can't remember. I'm very bad with
Yeah.
terminology and names, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so these stories have been, were very popular. And like I said, all religions, cults, etc., want to ride on these stories. I also
Mhm.
told you about when we were talking about Bengal and how it was Islamized. Then so many of the stories of Indian rishis were
Mhm.
converted into stories of Muslim peers. And they
Mhm.
become very hodgepodge as a result
Mhm.
of that. Even,
Mhm.
this story of Maud Galyayan and his mother, it's a very hodgepodge story of which is kind of, elements taken of Jaratkaru and mixed up with other things. But then
Mhm.
everyone wants to tell stories in their own way, through their own viewpoint. So that's fair enough.
Yeah, yeah.
That's quite fair enough. So the only thing I wanted to say was, and perhaps, okay, I will not inflict too many maps on people, but I do want to say that there has been trade between, or perhaps just one map, not too many.
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
so I'll share
Always.
one.
The map of the episode.
So Utkarsh, can you see the world map with three
Yes, yes,
circles?
I can see it.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So if you can, I'm not able to enlarge it. But see, these are basically the interlocking circuits of world trade. So can you see
Okay.
that to the circle to the left, it is basically India, Gulf, and then it goes to Europe. The big
Correct.
circle in the middle is China, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, this little
Yeah.
big circle in the middle. And there is another one in the corner which has China, Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia, and all these are intersecting. There
Yeah.
are trade routes through the land, there are trade routes through the sea, and maybe I will actually put one more. Once I'll send it to you and you can just slip it in here, which will show you the different ways in which people communicated. And there is a gentleman called Tan Sen Sen. So Tan Sen Sen has written a number of very well researched books on this.
Hmm.
And I will borrow some maps from his. And since I have also researched a lot, I have some maps of my own,
Hmm.
which I will send to you so that you can put it in here, which will show the circulation not only of things, which we are not concerned with here, but of ideas, of
Okay.
knowledge, and
Hmm.
of concepts. That's
Yeah.
exactly what we've been talking about here. How
Okay.
have ideas flown? How have ideas changed? Gautam Buddha took some of the ideas, Vedic ideas, and changed them in his own way. Then this Buddhism went to China and became something. And it
Hmm.
mixed with local ideas and became something else. It was again, it went to different countries, Japan, Korea,
Hmm.
etc. And then it became something else. So, how did this whole circulation of ideas take place? That is what we have spoken about in this episode, is an
Hmm.
illustration of worldwide circulation of ideas. And we are talking
Hmm.
about the ones which originated in India, which are basically Vedic ideas.
Hmm. Yeah. I think what we also should deep dive separately. Uh, so if you look at China, what I find very fascinating is that there isn't technically there are religions like Buddhism, Taoism, and what have you. But in reality, what I find is most people are not religious in the same way as you think of people being religious in India, where they're clearly identifying as I'm Hindu or I'm Muslim. But nonetheless, they have very specific customs that they follow in a very religious manner. But that custom, very much like what you were saying right now, is a mixture of many, many different influences. It's very fascinating.
And
Because
again, for the last more than 100 years, there is a kind of unifying and transmogrifying influence of communism. It has its
I think
own way of.
that's something I don't know enough about, because I don't know enough people from mainland China.
Well,
So
nor do
how
I.
their thoughts
Nor do
have
I.
influenced.
And then China is in a way very insular, Utkarsh. You
It is
don't
very
really
insular.
know. You don't really know what's going on inside there. So you
Absolutely.
can learn about the past, and you can learn about, things that were happening there, even maybe till the first part of the 20th century. But after that, it becomes very different.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm talking about is more in reference to the folks that I know, folks in Singapore and Malaysia primarily. But then, of course, you have a lot of very successful Chinese communities in Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, etc. also. So this is
And
what I
in the
find very
US,
interesting.
and in the US,
Yeah.
Chinese American community also.
Absolutely. So I think
But
there is
I must
something.
confess that it is a bit of a closed book for me. I can talk about ancient China because there's a lot of information and research. But
For me,
what about modern China?
yeah. No, modern China is, I mean, I think there are many people other than us trying to figure that out. But what I'm
Indeed, yes.
interested in is to your point, right? There is the Vedic idea that I'm finding that is underlining a lot of what I find what are Chinese customs, at least here in Singapore and Malaysia.
So,
So I'm
Utkarsh,
very
for me,
curious
it
to
is
understand that link.
quite fascinating when you ask me a question. And then when I go deep into the question, I find the Vedic idea. So you mentioned the hungry ghost, and I read a bit and I thought a bit, and then I realized it's all Pitri Rin. And Pitri Rin is the basis of the Vedic way of life.
Yeah, correct.
So we'll keep making these connections, talking to each other, and getting
And even
feedback from
and by the
people.
way, there's one thing that I noticed, which is maybe common to Indians also, but I think very, very particular amongst Chinese, at least overseas Chinese. I keep saying this because I do want to distinguish, because I don't know what is happening in mainland China, that the focus on the next generation is tremendous. Like, it is all about doing whatever you can so that the next generation can do better than you. That focus, I've seen it in India, but I think it is there to the same, if not even further extent. I'll give you a manifestation of this one, because as you know, my wife Nidhi works in property. So what you find is, of course, in India, everyone wants to get into the best school, and there is a lot of difference in quality between certain schools. In Singapore, the average education standard is very, very high. There are differences, of course, but the average is very high. Yet, for the best schools, basically, if you're within a kilometer of the school, you get a preference for admission.
Yeah, localization.
The kind of premium you pay to be close to a good school, it is not even funny. It is ridiculous. Right? It is, and it's all because of this focus on the next thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's just an interesting.
Utkarsh, I tend to think that this is a basic human tendency, but in the West, somehow their culture has lost it.
It's less so in the West, for sure.
It's not completely decimated, because it's still there. People are still trying to do stuff for the next generation and leaving their wealth to the next, but it's really getting decimated. I think that's because of the individual first kind of attitude, that nobody else is important except for me. So perhaps because of that kind of
individual first, postmodernism, rejection of so many of things. So there's that's another topic for another day.
Breaking apart of the family and community. That's true. But I think of everything that we do, this unearthing roots of Asian, Chinese, Southeast Asian culture is one of my favorites. It's been this one has been so much fun. This hungry ghost reading upon it has been so much fun. Because anyway, I love Diwali and I love festivals. So talking about festivals, researching festivals is in any case one of my favorite things to do. And Utkarsh, we will do that Diwali and actually the Ramayana episode on Southeast Asian Ramayans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
So
should we end it here?
after mentioning that, thank you for taking us to 26,000 people. And do
Oh,
give
yes.
us a chance to celebrate 30,000 quickly.
Yes. Why stop at 30? We want more.
Yeah, we'll celebrate 30 and then talk about 50 and 1 lakh.
So on and so forth. Yes.
So on and so forth.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Namaste and see you again.